Hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Let's Analyze! Today, I shall perform an analysis on the new Sacred Stones banner, my first impression of it, and some potential builds that I can build even without knowing their stats. Alright, so to start things off, we have Myrrh, also known as DRAGON NINO. She's the star of this banner and has been on my watch list for some time. I fully expected something like Hone Dragon to be carried by her, and lo and behold, there it is. But before we talk about that, let's start with the basics, shall we? Flying. Dragon. Myrrh is the bringer of a new unit type. It's kinda funny, because with the exception of City Mongolian Lin, most of these new unit types had been green units, like Spring Camilla, the Flying Tome, or Halloween Henry, the Armored Mage, and New York Azura, the Flying Singer. However, none of them so far had brought themselves two weaknesses until today. Now, I know some of you are probably wondering if Iold's shield can cover both those weaknesses, due to, its old description of neutralizes effective against bonuses. Well, they must have patched that at some point, because now the description says effective against flyers. So I'm pretty sure, with how much emphasis that they put onto this, that Iold's shield will probably only protect you against arrows. Well, and Merrick too, I guess. Still, it's not a bad thing, because Myrrh is supposed to be built with heavy defenses in mind, but it could also be an effectively wasted slot if the enemy are not using archers. So as such, this dual typing that Myrrh has is more of a headache than anything, because now you have to worry about things that could one-shot you, which might or might not exist on the battlefield. Being green also makes you extremely susceptible to the various Xian users, and still leaves you open to death by Naga. It'll depend on her res. Furthermore, being a flying type rather than infantry meant that Myrrh cannot obtain steady breath, which is the A skill for dragons, allowing them to dish out deadly skills one after another while also providing them with physical bulk. Something that would have been absolutely perfect for Myrrh. Still, I guess it's not all bad, because being able to fly meant that Myrrh can travel difficult terrains, while providing guidance to infantry units, namely all the other dragons, and armored units if she is to be used in a mixed team. I mean, she's already a mixed breed, might as well go all the way, right? Well, she can also put in work as a bulky option in a flyer team, though flyers are usually better performing hit-and-run tactics with reposition thanks to their freedom of movement on the map. But the option is there, and I mean, really, with enough hone and gold flyers, even the slowest units can turn into speed demons. I mean, Spring Camilla is the living proof of this. Well, then after that, you just need to get yourself hit and run or drag back as your BA slot option, and you'll have a pretty effective dragon bomber, especially against two ranged units, since now you get to pick and choose their weaknesses. Chances are you'll obliterate them. Ironically though, Myrrh isn't as good in a full dragon team due to not having gold support. And that since she is the carrier of Hone Dragon herself, chances are she's not going to have a very strong player phase, especially since Hone Dragon itself is weak to Panic Ploy. Even if they have Gold Dragon, it's not like infantry dragons can always toss her back to safety reposition as well. Anyway, based on the trailer and her weapon, it would appear that Myrrh isn't fast, as she wasn't able to double some generic even with Fury 3 attached. And if she was fast, then her legendary weapon is kinda pointless, That being said, let's talk about her weapon now. So she gets the first legendary breath in the form of Great Flame. Aside from the staggering 19 might and the basic dragon ability to target weaknesses of two ranged units, Myrrh can outright stop an enemy from performing a follow-up attack so long as her defense is 5 or greater than the enemy she's fighting. From that description, it's safe to assume that Myrrh is probably a dragon with high defense and low speed to take advantage of this. It's a pretty solid weapon, though I think I like Bike's Irvan more. One of that reason is because he gets a skill discount, first of all. And two is that he still takes a second greatly reduced hit, which helps speeds up his own skill charge while potentially making an enemy waste a skill on an 80% damage reduction. Still, it came at a price where if he counterattacks, then this entire effect is wasted. But anyway, this weapon is still plenty good. Despite not working on enemies with high defenses, chances are those guys with high defense are pretty slow as it is. Its high might combined with quick riposta and heavy blade seal will also allow you to throw out a deadly bonfire on enemy attack if you were to hit twice. That's about as close to steady breath that Myrrh is going to get. Though on the plus side, you'll also still get to use distant counter as opposed to Bike, who has to give that up unless he wants to take a harsh second hit to the face. Do note though that this setup is reliant on the enemy not having higher attack than you, and of course being able to hit you once. So if they're buffed to the wazoo, then Heavy Blade is wasted. And that's pretty much all there is unique for Myrrh. To summarize, she is very, very powerful, but she also has a number of weaknesses that can hold her back. Weaknesses that are completely dependent on what the enemy field. Myrrh doesn't deal in absolutes, because even her weapon can work against her since she needs to have a rather sizable defense difference for it to work. You'll find that there will be people with high defense and high speed who throw away their attack like Selena Miku, or the resistance like Seekbird that could really ruin her day. One other thing I guess that could make her unique is if she gets so-called trainee BST on top of power creep BST with no excuses whatsoever and becomes some kind of winged monster with armor BST. That would be truly, truly terrible. And I hope to God that when her stats finally comes out, she'll at least stick to the same convention as Naui or Fei. Speaking of stats, I say plus def is probably her best boon since she needs to prevent enemy doubles with that weapon of hers. She looks like she'll have enough attack thanks to that 19 might monstrosity, while her speed is not necessary for as long as she meets that defense requirement, making minus speed probably the ideal bane. We can still work with any IVs from Myrrh though, but I think those are the ideals for now. Finally, if I were to build her, if her resistance is decent, like, oh, say 25 or above, then distant counter is probably the best A skill for her. You can also work with her native fury like Fortress Dev or something like Brazen Attack Dev to make sure that she maintains her defense superiority. Her B skill is definitely quick repulsed, so that she can swing twice. Her C skill is kind of dependent on her team, while Heavy Blade is a great seal for someone like with chunks of attacks like Myrrh. Iot's shield would work as well as a seal, and you can also run guidance as a seal or her C slot to provide support for her fellow dragons. Alright, so next up we have La Rochelle, one of the greatest disappointment of all times. Well, for me anyway. Because I was really looking forward to a healer and to do more shenanigans with, but I suppose this isn't too bad. Because I really wouldn't want to deal with a legendary staff right now anyway, because that means I'd have to invest on that character. Anyway, to the matter at hand. It would appear that La Rochelle is a blue mage cavalry unit. Probably has something to do with blue being light magic now. Unfortunately for her though, that means that she'll end up being compared to the Reinhardt. So she's got some pretty big shoes to fill, especially nowadays the game is setting up more and more anti-cavalry, and Reinhardt in particular. So, alright, what does she bring to the table exactly? Well, she brings the Tomi Valdi, which gives attack and speed plus 3 if the enemy she's fighting with has 100% health at the start of combat. Now, what does this remind me of? Ah, yes, a certain face cancer patient named Lloyd and his wonderful Regal blade that did the same thing. Except power creeped, of course. This thing works on both player and enemy phase, which might be handy if she were to be attacked by something that would have normally doubled her. And it would also work with that random +3 dev she gets with the tome as a bonus. Offensively, although this weapon will help greatly, La Rochelle will probably need a decent amount of attack and speed if she wishes to surpass the cancer that is Reinhardt. Chances are, though, that's not very likely, as the rest of her kit seems to suggest a somewhat bulky character with the likes of Renewal 3 and Res Tactics 3. I mean, alright, I'm sure she will get power creep BST, as that is the norm nowadays, as much as it sickens me. But even then, as a ranged cavalier, her stats distribution is gonna be a bit limited. There's only really so much you can do stretch your stats with. So the best way to go about doing it is probably a faster character with high HP, though I have some doubts that will be La Rochelle. I think she'll probably have mage or healer stats. Now, as SI material goes, she only gets the Res Tactics, which is One thing I also like to note is that, unless they changed it recently without me knowing, is that ploys work before buffs, so your current res will be checked before the buffs take place. Similarly, buffs will not protect you against enemy ploys due to this priority. So, in essence, you're really picking that move up for more res to tank someone with, rather than, trying to trigger a ploy or avoiding ploys. And being a field buff makes it susceptible to panic as well. So I'm not a huge fan. You'll probably find more mileage with attack tactics and speed tactics when that comes around. Ultimately, while she is hot, I can't imagine myself using her. Guntra was one thing because she actually provided something for the team in terms of her blessings and map-wide debuffs, while La Rochelle seems to only bring something, I dare say, half-assed to the table. Better to just stick with the Reinhardt, I think. Now, if I do plan to use her though, like if her stats surprises me in some way, I will probably be something along the lines of plus attack or plus speed IVs so that I can focus on her offensive prowess. Her defensive stats will work as a dump. Minus HP is the universal one these days, and minus dev will be offset by her weapons, and meanwhile minus res will probably be offset by her decently sized res. In general, ranged cavalry are not really suited for defensive purposes. Now, they can work, but in general their reduced BST and their 3 movement range is better used on the offense, I think. And finally, we have Brave Eirika. Might as well call her that, because for some stupid reason they've decided to go with her again. I didn't realize that Sacred Stones has such a shallow pool of characters that you need to run her again instead of some other character. Oh well, who am I to question the Japanese and their decisions? They're probably still got brain damage from the atomic bombs, which turned them from samurais into otakus. Anyway, she's just about as disappointing as La Rochelle, a straight-up beatstick, with her legendary weapon Gleipnir, which has the same +3 attack and speed bonus and a +3 res on top of that. Now, as Red Mage Cavalry goes, she easily surpasses Leo, but that's really a sad comparison because there really is nothing to compare with in the first place. Still, I guess pulling off a +7 attack and speed on a 100% health target with her base kit is kinda scary. And she also helps support our friendly blue cavalry mage by being red. So it's not like she's a bad character or anything. It's just that I just don't really like beatsticks all that much. They're strong, but the 1-round KO, kill or be killed meta doesn't really appeal to me. Especially now as Intelligent Systems seems to have a hate boner for horses nowadays. Anyway, as SI goes, she's got the attack and speed rally, which is a nice universal buffs for both offensive and defensive purposes. And of course, her Swift Sparrow, which is now pretty commonly found in newly released offensive characters. The Red Tome XP though, that is a joke. If I were to use her, I'd probably build her the same way as I did with Larashel. Though, her weapon and natural res might allow for some ploy shenanigans. Anyway, that's pretty much it for my analysis of this banner. I'd say wait a little bit before summoning on this banner. Maybe even skip this, as these characters will no doubt swing by again in some legendary banner or something like that at a later date. Save as much as you can for the anniversary banner. I think that's probably the best choice. Well, the legendary banner that's coming up is also something to look at too, but something tells me they have something awful planned for anniversary, so they're really baiting us as hard as they can first, before making us seriously dump our orbs in the anniversary. Anyway, enough talk. I thank you all for watching. Until next time.